After brushing his teeth, he went to eat something and got ready for his virtual camp fight. However, his comlink suddenly started to ring. Han-sen thought it was Jai Yanran and answered it casually. However, in the holographic image that popped out, Huangfu Pinking appeared. Huangfu Pinking, how come you have the time today? Han-sen said casually. They were quite familiar with each other, so he did not bother to go through the greetings. Do you know that dollar has appeared again? Huangfu Pinking said directly. I believe every evolver knows that, Han-sen said helplessly, spreading his hands. He did not expect the attention he attracted by using an ID name related to dollar. You really think that person is dollar? Huangfu Pinking said. I think so, replied Han-sen. Why? Huangfu Pinking asked, puzzled. Instinct, Han-sen said casually, thinking, that person is me, so of course I know. Huangfu Pinking thought about it and said, I also feel it is probably true. However, dollar is making such a huge progress. I wonder which shelter he's at. If you don't know, I would know even less. Right? Why do you look for him? Does Son of Heaven still want to go after him? Han-sen asked, pretending to be casual. Although my cousin hates dollar, he is not so bored. The reason I want to look for him is because the footwork he was using in the fights looked like Heavenly Go. Huangfu Pinking said grimly. Even if he is using Heavenly Go, what does that have to do with you? Han-sen asked, puzzled. Currently, in the Alliance there should be only 2 persons who practice Heavenly Go. One is my grandmother, and the other is the student of my grandmother. Even I did not manage to learn Heavenly Go. If he was really using that, Ares Martial Hall must investigate into that. Hearing Huangfu Pinking out, Han-sen felt puzzled. And then he looked at her and asked, is the student of your grandmother that queen from Queen Restaurant? How do you know that? Huangfu Pinking looked at Han-sen, surprised, her breasts moving up and down dramatically. Huangfu Pinkings are the best. Although that girl has huge breasts, their shape was not as perky and perfect as Huangfu Pinking's. Han-sen couldn't help thinking, I've met Queen on Gladiator before and learned some kiting skills from her. It helped me a lot, but I don't know if that's the Heavenly Go you mentioned, Han-sen said. Is that true? Huangfu Pinking was shocked, asking Han-sen to show her the skills he learned hastily. Han-sen only demonstrated what he learned from Queen and did not expose any part of the technique in Dongshuan Sutra. Huangfu Pinking was even more surprised. After she watched Han-sen's demonstration, she looked at Han-sen with a strange look and said, Queen is a very proud person. Except for my grandparents, she did not care for anybody. Even I was ignored by her constantly. She would not even look at ordinary people. The fact that she would teach you Heavenly Go is simply incredulous, although she did not teach you a lot. Tell me, why is that? Han-sen told Queen the story in details. The reason he was explaining was to let people know that he learned the footwork from Queen, in case anyone recognized the footwork. Huangfu Pinking was surprised hearing the story. So that's what has happened. You are indeed a genius for making her treat you differently. Unfortunately, I have only learned a little bit. Han-sen licked his lips and said, a little bit is quite nice already. Without the talent, one could not learn anything. Heavenly Go is definitely one of the top 10 hyper-geno arts, even better than Super Diamond Body. Not everyone has the chance to learn, Huangfu Pinking said admiringly. Why didn't your grandmother teach you? Han-sen asked her. My grandmother said that my character and talents were not right for Heavenly Go. If I force it, I would probably get myself killed, which is why she did not teach me. In fact, I'm not the only one. No one in my family was taught Heavenly Go. Queen is her only student, Huangfu Pinking said helplessly. So, I really envy you for having such talent. That's right. If one does not learn the kiting skills well, one would get oneself killed even faster, Han-sen agreed with her. The kiting skills that focused on calculation could easily be manipulated by the opponent if the user had poor abilities, which would cause the user to be killed. For example, when Han-sen was against Queen, if he were to use the kiting skills, he would lose even faster, which was because Queen had better skills in calculation and designing. She was even able to turn Han-sen's calculation against himself. Before he gained better abilities at calculation, Han-sen would rather stand still than use kiting skills in front of Queen if they were fighting for their lives. Oh, I have to go. Talk to you later. It seemed that Huangfu Pinking suddenly thought of something. She muttered some words out of order before she hung up. Han-sen shrugged helplessly, not knowing what had happened to Huangfu Pinking. He had never seen her so disorganized before. Ready to go to the military camp, Han-sen suddenly heard a crack in his sea of soul. The blood snail, which had gone through transformation of several months, eventually broke out of the cocoon. Han-sen was suddenly overjoyed. Initially, he thought all the beast souls would finish the upgrade within 1 month. However, all beast souls had different paces. It took several months for the blood snail to finish its upgrade. The upgraded blood snail had different looks from before. It used to have a jade shell and red meat, looking like a snail shell floating on a red cloud. Currently, the entire blood snail had turned red, its shell looking like red crystal. The beast's soul seemed to be on fire from afar. Type of beast soul of Berserk Super Blood Snail, pet armor. The introduction to the blood snail did not change much. There was only an extra word, Berserk. Hansen thought about it and went into a training field. He then summoned the Golden Rock Worm King and equipped it with the super pet armor. The red armor turned the Golden Rock Worm King into a red tank with a ferocious and fierce look. Hansen used 30% of his force to hit the pet. Although the Golden Rock Worm King backed off a little bit, the pet armor was still intact. Hansen almost jumped with joy, hitting the Golden Rock Worm King again with 60% of his force, and the pet was still fine. Hansen increased his force gradually, but the Golden Rock Worm King equipped with super pet armor was never injured, like a cockroach that could never be killed. In the end, Hansen hit the Golden Rock Worm King with all his strength, while he was only able to blow the pet away. With the protection of the super pet armor, the pet was not hurt severely, and the super pet armor only had a dent on it and was not broken. The result made Hansen feel both surprised and disappointed. The blood snail did not turn into a beast soul of second god's sanctuary like the holy angel. It seemed that not all the beast souls could evolve like that. The black crystal only turned the blood snail into a berserk beast soul. However, a berserk super beast soul from first god's sanctuary was comparable to a sacred blood beast soul from second god's sanctuary. This was great news to Hansen. Hansen suddenly had a thought. If I upgrade a beast soul from second god's sanctuary, I wonder if it could be turned into a berserk beast soul directly. If that is possible, I will be able to make a huge fortune. For the same beast soul, the value of a berserk one would be several times or several dozen times that of a normal beast soul. If he could turn a beast soul berserk, the profit was unimaginable. In addition, if he could turn the sacred blood beast souls from second god's sanctuary into berserk ones, it would be a great help for Hansen to hunt super creatures in the future. Of course, what Hansen was worried about the most was the time it took for the upgrade to take place. The holy angel only used a month, while it took several months for the blood snail to become berserk. Hansen had not yet figured out the rules. Hansen had no mood to go to the military camp anymore. He immediately went to the teleport device and entered Starwheel Shelter. Hansen was looking for suitable praise on the ice field, but to no avail. In recent days, he had not even run into a mutant creature and had only gained some primitive geno points. England was right. The resources on the ice field were not enough to support so many humans to cultivate. In comparison, the mountains around Goddess Shelter had quite a lot of advanced creatures that acted alone. However, the terrain of the mountainous region was not suitable for large-scale hunting because of the potential dangers. If they did not want to risk their lives in the mountains, they had to take down the royal shelter in order to communicate with outside. Otherwise, they had to stay at the spot and rely on the limited resources. Hansen decided to check out the royal shelter, getting ready for conquering it in the future. After marching for 2 days toward the royal shelter, the evil-blooded condor had already become a berserk beast soul. However, Hansen still did not know what the glyph should be used for. It was not that easy to tell like the glyph of the gargoyle. Because Hansen had no other beast souls, he fed the black crystal to the golden growler. He did not have time to make money using the black crystal recently anyways. Running on the ice field, Hansen was using Treading Cloud on his way. Without 7 twists, he had to settle with Treading Cloud. Luckily, the effect of Treading Cloud was much better than Hansen had thought. It enhanced his speed and was also quite easy to learn. Hansen was pleased that it was much better than Sparticle he used. Indeed, the Chens are great at footwork. I wish I could get my hands on 7 twists someday, Hansen said to himself. A few hundred miles from the royal shelter, Hansen saw the silver-haired spirit riding the dragon snake on the ice field, followed by groups of creatures. Hansen had no idea where she was going. Seeing the sacred blood creatures among the groups, Hansen immediately decided against a sneak attack. Last time, there was Starwheel Shelter as his backup, which he now did not have. If he went there alone, he would most definitely get himself killed. However, on a different note, since the silver-haired spirit had left the shelter, could he take the opportunity to steal her spirit stone from her shelter? Although there were definitely sacred blood creatures guarding the shelter, this was an opportunity nonetheless. Even if the chance was slim, it would not hurt to check it out. After Hansen arrived at the royal shelter, he was surprised by what he saw. Although he had read about the description of royal shelters, it was simply overwhelming seeing it with his own eyes. It was not even like a castle. It was a huge metropolitan. At first glance, he could not even see the borders. In the sky, huge creatures were flying, and groups of strange birds were hovering. A large number of creatures were going across the shelter, many of which were sacred blood creatures. Even on the lawn in front of the royal shelter, humongous creatures were feeding. Initially, Han-sen imagined that he might be able to sneak into the royal shelter, but with a glance, he knew that he could never sneak inside, and he would have no idea where the spirit stone was even if he did. A stone the size of a fist in a large metropolitan was harder to find than anything else. Unless he had the power to take down the spirit shelter the hard way, it was almost impossible for him to touch the spirit stone. If I could take down such a huge shelter, I would be so rich just by collecting taxes. It would be no worse than a large city. I would not even be able to count the money I could earn. Han-sen became more and more excited. If he could conquer the royal shelter, he would be dominating this region. In addition, he would also have a royal spirit servant. This place was such a treasure. The only thing bothering him was that he did not have the power to take down the place alone. This is not okay. I have to think of a way to urge the other 3 shelters to unite together. It would be good if I earn the allegiance of the royal spirit first. As for this royal shelter, the humans will have to give it to me when I am strong enough. Han-sen thought to himself. He did not dare to hunt in this area. Once noticed by the creatures of the shelter, it would be hard for him even to run away. Han-sen had to go back following the way where he came from. Luckily, Han-sen had hunted a lot of small creatures these days, which gave him quite a few primitive geno points. Now he had 63 primitive geno points and 100 ordinary geno points already. Currently, Han-sen's fitness was around 100. After he used Heresy Mantra and Overload, his strength and speed could easily break 100. Such fitness in Yin-Yang Blast would be enough to beat that tiger of blue blood, right? Han-sen estimated that it was time for the military contest and returned to the Alliance. This military contest was not the one of the entire Alliance soldiers, but just the contest in the Southwest Galaxy where Daphne belonged to. All units in Southwest Galaxy would send contestants. Initially, Blue Blood Special Force was not a part of Southwest Galaxy. Because Jai Yanran was selecting guards, Tiger of Blue Blood chose to give up the contest of the Central Galaxy and came down to Southwest. This made the soldiers ready to take part in the contest in the Southwest Galaxy clench their fists, ready to teach this person a lesson. Blue Blood Special Force was always the best of the best, which got on the nerves of the soldiers of other forces naturally. Now that they had a chance to compare themselves against the best soldier from the Blue Blood Special Force, they definitely wanted to prove how good they were. Actually, we are only here to be onlookers. We are all counting on Zheng Yu's here. I hope that he can beat the Tiger of Blue Blood Special Force and make Southwest Galaxy proud, said the young soldier. Zheng Yu's. Han-sen thought about it, and it seemed he had heard of this name. Zheng Yu's appeared to be one of the other 2 candidates competing for the position of Jai Yanran's guard. After chatting with the young soldier for a while, the warm-up zone suddenly became quiet. Han-sen followed everyone's gazes to a huge man who walked over in large steps. Even looking at him made people want to run away. Tiger of Blue Blood, Tai, whispered the soldiers from the Southwest Galaxy. Glancing at the soldiers in the warm-up zone with his black eyes, Tai eventually gazed at a 40-year-old veteran and asked seriously, "You are Zheng Yu's?" "I am," Zheng Yu said and nodded. "Great," Tai replied, and then sat down without saying anything else. After all, he was not from this galaxy and had no friends here, so he was simply resting. Seeing how Tai acted, Han-sen knew that he thought nothing of Han-sen and the other competitor, and believed that only Zheng Yu's was worthy of his attention. Han-sen did not care much. After all, everything was about strength in the end. It would not benefit him if Zheng Yu's or Tai gave him more credit. Very soon, the contest began. The contestants walked in a group into the venue, seeing a sea of soldiers and officers who were the audience. It was quite magnificent to watch. The Southwest Galaxy included 2 main galaxies, Zygely Galaxy and Nansangshuan Galaxy, and 16 smaller galaxies. Only Zygely Galaxy and Nansangshuan Galaxy had a large number of habitable planets. Only 1 or 2 of the 16 smaller galaxies had military bases. Other planets were either uninhabitable or used for mining only. The first event was a test of strength. A strength tester was placed on the venue, looking like a giant drum. The contestants could hit the drum using whatever method they chose, and then the screen on the drum would show the score of the last hit. The higher the score, the better. Although no one would be eliminated because of a bad score, one's final score was the sum of the scores of all events. If in the end, one's final score was not among the top 4, one would not be able to enter the contests for the title of Soldier King. Shortly, in the thunder-like cheers of the soldiers, the first round of the strength test began. The soldier who was called first came up to the stage to strike the drum. Since all the contestants were elites from their respective units, they were all evolvers with fitness over 100. After watching for a while, Han Sen noticed that the score was ordinarily between 100 and 105, and there were not any outstanding performances. Although it was a galaxy-wide contest, there was an age limit on the contestants, and some special forces were not allowed in the contest. Very soon, it was Taiyi's turn. The eyes of all the contestants were focused on him. Even the audience stopped cheering, waiting to see Taiyi's performance quietly. Under all the attention, Taiyi was not nervous at all. He simply walked up to the drum and hit it without any additional moves. Boom! A loud sound made people's ears hurt. The number on the screen of the drum changed quickly and ended up on the number 113.7584. Everyone couldn't help gasping. This kind of strength was nerve-wracking among evolvers. A sacred blood evolver only had a fitness index around 30 to begin with in Second God's Sanctuary. With ordinary, primitive, and mutant geno points maxed out, a sacred blood evolver could only reach around 90. In order to have a fitness index of 110, one would have to gain at least 40 to 50 sacred geno points. The expressions of all the contestants changed. Zhang Yu's looked grim. This kind of strength was a huge pressure on all of them. From Han Sen's perspective, this should not be the best Taiyi could do. If he used everything he had, he should be able to make the score a bit higher. Later on, it was Zhang Yu's turn. Zhang Yu walked up to the drum, took a deep breath, gave a loud roar, and then hit the drum fiercely. Boom! The screen showed the number 114.2584, giving rise to loud applause from the audience. This number was even better than Taiyi's, which boosted the morale of the soldiers in the Southwest Galaxy. Zhang Yu did well. On the stands, the chief of the Southwest Galaxy troops nodded and complimented. "Chief, I don't think he is the match of Taiyi." Zhang Yu had the all he got in his strike, while Taiyi was still conserving his strength, said the secretary. The chief did not mind it. How much resource did Blue Blood Special Force put into their tiger? And how much resource did Zhang Yu have? The fact that he has such performance is enough to prove his excellence. The chief thought about it and then asked, how are the other two persons? Major Wang Gang was also an elite from his department, but he is not as good as Zhang Yu's. As for the person recommended by Jai Yanran herself, I have looked him up as well. The secretary looked through his files on his comlink and said, Jai Yanran and Han Sen are schoolmates and a couple. Han Sen does not have much of a background. Jai Yanran must have pulled some strings for him to go to Daphne. He had been in Second God's Sanctuary less than a year. Being a sacred blood evolver, he had a great foundation. However, according to his registration, he is currently located in a remote small shelter. There are only 2,000 to 3,000 people there, so it should be impossible for him to gain Geno points efficiently. I think that Jai Yanran originally wanted for Han Sen to be her guard, and only failed because of the pressure from the upper level. So, among the candidates, Han Sen should be the least competent, the secretary summarized. The chief nodded. As they were speaking, it was Han Sen's turn. In front of the drum, Han Sen took a deep breath, his heart thumping and his bones squeaking. His punch traveled through the air and hit on the drum. Boom! With a loud noise that hurts people's ears, the number on the screen quickly changed and froze at 111.1111. This number was so neat that it looked like it was faked. Everyone was dazed. Of course, it was not just because the number was needed, but mainly because it was such a good score. Up until this moment, it was the third best. The soldiers started to applaud for Han Sen, because he was one of the Southwest Galaxy. Damn it, what's wrong with the score? It must mean I am going to be single all my life. Han Sen felt quite depressed. He uses his best to see how much he could get and did not expect such a number. Despite the unlucky number, he was quite satisfied with his score. With the score, he could be counted as an elite him on the evolvers. Well done, brother. Are all the cooks on your warship so good? When Han Sen returned to his seat, the young soldier gave him a thumbs up. That's true, but we're not cooks, we are cookhouse soldiers. Han Sen smiled and said. Because of his punch, lots of contestants were impressed by Han Sen. But Taiyi did not even look at Han Sen. Naturally, Taiyi could tell that Han Sen had given all he got with his punch and even tapped into his potentials using hyper-geno arts. Although his score was good, Taiyi did not think much of him. This Han Sen is not bad. He does know something, the chief said, slightly surprised. The secretary wiped some cold sweat off his forehead. The discrepancy between Han Sen's performance and his investigation was a negligence on his side. Although the chief did not say much, the secretary understood very well that he should not have made such a mistake and the chief would not tolerate such mistakes every time. "I'm so sorry, Chief. I will reinvestigate right away," the secretary said hastily. "No need. This is the best test. Let's wait and see," the chief said quietly. "Yes, sir." Although the secretary continued to watch the game, he still quickly looked at the information he found on Han-sen again. The chief could be merciful, but he had to be committed to his duty. Otherwise, there was no need for him to stay on his position, which was utterly dangerous. The second item was Sprint, to Han-sen's surprise. However, this device was tuned to level 10 with a gravity of 100. Without a fitness level of over 100, it would be impossible for someone to run inside, let alone pass all the metal walls. After the game began, soldiers entered the device. However, the result was not great. 8 soldiers had failed at Sprint. None of them finished even a third of it. The gravity of 100 was simply too difficult. Even with the fitness index of 100, one could easily get tired, so it was hard for them to maintain the speed and reflex. Han-sen frowned. This gravity setup was clearly too high. With the fitness level around 100, it would be more sensible to set it at 80 or 90. Even Han-sen himself could not help frowning seeing such a hard test. One soldier tried after another, but they all failed. After the better half of the contestants had failed, it was eventually Taiyi's turn. Although many soldiers from Southwest Galaxy wished Taiyi to lose, they were soon disappointed. Taiyi's muscular body jumped across the metal walls like a robot that was never tired. It looked like he was not bound by gravity at all. Without a single mistake, he kept the same speed and rushed through wall after wall, which made Han-sen gasp with admiration. Taiyi was indeed an impressive figure. Great fitness, sensitive senses, and a perfect judgment of the bigger picture. He seemed that this incredibly difficult sprint could not trap him at all. "He really is tough," Han-sen said to himself. In the end, Taiyi finished Sprint perfectly, as if he had done something trivial. He returned to his seat quietly and sat down. The soldiers of Southwest Galaxy all placed their hope on Zhang Yu's who followed. Unfortunately, although Zhang Yu's did everything he could, he fell after going through 70%, which made many soldiers sigh in sadness. Seeing that even Zhang Yu's failed at the test, the soldiers of Southwest Galaxy felt disappointed. "Damn it, even Zhang Yu's failed. The tiger of blue blood must be so content," said the young soldier sitting next to Han-sen disappointedly. After he said that, he looked at Han-sen and said, "Brother, how about you? Do you think he can do it? We can only count on you right now." Hearing the young soldier, the other contestants were also paying attention to Han-sen's reply. Most soldiers had already failed and there were only a few people left. Han-sen was definitely the biggest hope among the remaining soldiers, so people had naturally placed their hope on him. "No problem," Han-sen replied concisely. Between soldiers, there was no need to be humble on the battlefield. You must trust your comrades and make them trust you. Although this was not a battlefield, it was about the honor of Southwest Galaxy. Therefore, Han-sen could not show any cowardice or lack of confidence. Hearing the conversation between Han-sen and the young soldier, Taiyi curled his lips with contempt and did not say much. From Taiyi's perspective, ordinary soldiers were not even comparable to him. Blue Blood Special Force was the best of the best, so he was naturally much better than any ordinary soldier. Before he came, Taiyi had investigated a lot into his 3 competitors. Han-sen, who entered Daphne using nepotism, was not even an opponent he acknowledged. Even if Han-sen's fitness was higher than his expectation, Taiyi still did not think that Han-sen had what it takes to be his opponent. A strong fitness only meant that Han-sen had been offered lots of meat in God's sanctuary. It was still hard to say whether Han-sen had done all the hunting himself. As for Sprint, Taiyi did not think Han-sen could finish the task. Zhang Yu's failed because of his insufficient vigor. In the strength test, Han-sen had to tap into his potentials to get a score of 110, which meant his fitness should be around 100, which was even worse than Zhang Yu's. How was it possible that Han-sen could go through? Therefore, in Taiyi's eyes, Han-sen was totally bluffing when he said no problem. The fact that Han-sen promised something that he could not accomplish to his comrades made Taiyi look down on him. It was soon Han-sen's turn. Han-sen ran into the sprint and did not rush to start. He first made some adjustments to his body. His fitness was around 100. With the gravity of 100, he could only walk inside. In order to reach the necessary speed, he must run under the state of overload. In order to go through the entire device, Han-sen must allocate his strength reasonably. Otherwise, he might fall because of lack of energy. It would not even matter how well he mastered the system. After Han-sen made the adjustments, he took a deep breath slowly and made his first step under everyone's watch. When making the first step, Han-sen had actually already calculated all the steps he was going to make in the device, in order to perfectly spend each ounce of his energy without any waste. going forward on the metal walls at a high speed. Han Sen's heart was thumping like a motor and all his bones were slightly squeaking. Han Sen's moves were different from any other person's, and also much different from the brutal way that Tai passed the device. Han Sen's moves were incredibly smooth. It was as smooth as the demonstration video. It felt like Han Sen's moves were pre-programmed. Each of his moves and even looks was so reasonable that it was incredulous. Very good. After watching for a while, the chief couldn't help nodding. At Han Sen's age, it was incredible that he had such great and accurate control of his body. Many Surpasser officers were watching the game even felt surprised. It was even hard for them to control their bodies like this. It was probably even beyond humans' limit. The level of control was more like it was conducted by AI. Each phone and muscle were moving in the most efficient way possible. The perfection made people feel their scalp was prickling. The secretary felt the same, covered in cold sweat. Mistake, a huge mistake. The investigation and analysis he conducted about Han Sen were so far from the truth. It was as if he had investigated into a different person instead of Han Sen. Although ordinary soldiers could not understand as much as the officers, they felt very excited and thrilled watching Han Sen's smooth moves. Tai frowned slightly. Even he was surprised by Han Sen's performance. The ability to control the body so delicately was something even he could not achieve. However, Tai did not think that Han Sen could go through the task by using incredible control. After all, Han Sen did not have enough strength to begin with, and techniques were not everything. For example, if someone only had $1, no matter how he saved and allocate the money, he could not buy food for a month using $1. Reasonable allocation could maximize the use of strength, but he first needed to have enough strength to be allocated. After going through half, Han Sen was covered in sweat as if he jumped out of water. Even his hair was stuck to his scalp. With abnormal flush on his skin, rising body temperature, and squeaking bones, he felt like he was going to collapse any second. All the soldiers and officers watching Han Sen couldn't help cheering for him. Under the state of overload, he still had half of the device to go through. They were afraid he could not last that long. Naturally, Han Sen did not think the same. Although the consumption of his energy under the gravity of 100 was even higher than he thought, as long as he wanted to do it, he could still finish. In terms of enhancing one's stamina, there were not many hyper-geno arts that could be compared to Jadeskin in the world. Although Han Sen looked like he was about to use up all his strength, for some reason, people felt reassured looking at his expression. People couldn't help but think he was trustworthy and he could last until the end as long as he wished to. It was the special charisma of a soldier, and it could not be described with words. It was nothing but trust. When Han Sen finally reached the end, everyone felt relieved and incredibly good. Applause sounded like thunder. Chief, Cookhouse Soldier Han Sen has finished the test, waiting for your instruction. Han Sen saluted to the officer judging the test. As he moved his arm, sweat fell, reflecting sunlight and the vital energy of youth. At ease. Well done, you could go back to your seat, the officer said with a smile. Seeing Han Sen going back, the chief said, very good. Very good indeed. This is more like a soldier from Southwest Galaxy. The secretary, who understood the chief very well, had very different understanding of this short comment. According to what the secretary knew about the chief, if he said good, then it was a great compliment already. If he said very good, it meant the chief appreciated the person a lot. Now that the chief said very good twice, with a strong tone, he must feel so excited inwardly. The secretary rarely heard the chief say something twice, and yet he did. Shooting, warframe operation, disassembling and reassembling the combat machines were the main parts of the military contests. In interstellar wars, science and technology were still the priority. Unless someone could reach the level of Surpasser, a soldier could not beat a warframe, let alone large weapons. What Han Sen had learned from school was put into use here. He ended up with a high score on each item, definitely a well-rounded soldier. Although Tai was great, Han Sen was not worse than him. In many items, they were each either the first or the second. The two were on quite the same level. All the soldiers felt it was great to watch. As a cookhouse soldier from Southwest Galaxy, Han Sen was able to perform as a close match to the Tiger of Blue Blood Special Force, which earned a great honor for the Southwest Galaxy and left a great impression on the soldiers. Although Zheng Yu's did well in the following items as well, he could not be compared with Han Sen or Tai. When the total score was calculated, Han Sen was the first place, beating Tai by 0.2, making all the soldiers of Southwest Galaxy cheer. Tai did not ignore Han Sen like before, but he still did not think Han Sen was a worthy opponent. Although Han Sen did well, his advantage was mainly in the technical items. It did not mean that Han Sen had better fighting skills than Tai. However, the final combat was a one-on-one combat, which would call for real strength, of which Tai was very confident. Han Sen did not say anything but tried to recover as much as possible, waiting for the combat for the title of Soldier King. Only the top 4 contestants with the highest scores could participate in the combat. In addition to Han Sen and Tai, Zheng Yuz and some soldier from an army came to the combat. Wang Gang did not make it to the top floor. The 4 of them were split into 2 groups. The winners of the groups would enter the finals to compete for the championship, while the losers would compete for the 3rd place. The grouping was decided by a draw. Luckily, Han Sen and Tai were in the same group, which meant the finals came earlier. It was a great news to Han Sen. He had not fully recovered yet. If he consumed some of his energy in another fight before he met Tai, it would be even harder. If I could finish the 3rd phase longevity in heresy mantra, I should be able to resolve the issue of the lack of energy. Zheng Yu's fight began first, which gave Han Sen more time to rest. After fighting another soldier for more than half an hour, Zheng Yuz won. If Han Sen could beat Tai, he would battle Zheng Yuz for the title of Southwest Soldier King. It was Han Sen's turn. Han Sen moved around and felt the sore was relieved a lot. He had been using jade skin for the past half an hour, relieving his fatigue. It seemed that the effect was quite good. Tai walked up, standing opposite Han Sen. Han Sen was tall himself, while Tai was a foot taller than him, bringing lots of pressure. However, Han Sen did not feel much. He had seen creatures as tall as skyscrapers and he was never scared, not to mention Tai was only a foot taller. When the whistle was blown, Han Sen stepped out and punched at Tai's chest. However, Tai stood still, looking at Han Sen with contempt. His body turned gold like the Buddha. It was as if he had become a statue. It turned out that Tai was trying to use Super Diamond Body to take Han Sen's punch and did not mean to block it at all, which made many soldiers of Southwest Galaxy hiss, pissed by the arrogance of Tai. However, Tai was not just being arrogant. The reason he was showing such confidence was not because he looked down on his opponent. For Tai, it was less important to beat Han Sen. His main goal was to earn the approval of Jai Yanran and the Jis. Otherwise, even if he had become a guard of Jai Yanran's, he would not receive too much attention. Therefore, Tai needed to show his strongest side. Even if he could not make Jai Yanran satisfy, he would need to get the approval from the Jis at least. Seeing Tai was trying to block his punch with Super Diamond Body, Han Sen was not mad at all, but happy instead. If there was an idiot standing still taking your punch, what was there to be mad about? Han Sen added more force into his punch and hit Tai's chest. The clash between the fist and muscle made muffled sounds like metal, making the audience feel shocked. After a series of attacks, Han Sen took back his fists and stepped back. His jade-like fists were already swollen and red, blood even flowed from some spots. However, Tai did not even move. The gap between them is so big that there is no way around it. Sigh, Han Sen could not beat Tai after all. You can't put it that way. How old is Han Sen? At Tai's age, he must be much stronger than Tai. Unfortunately, he's too young now. Don't talk about age. Losing is losing. We soldiers from Southwest Galaxy are not sore losers and we did not need excuses. Seeing Tai's performance, the secretary was secretly relieved. This time, he made a huge mistake, but luckily, the result was not too different from his prediction. Tai would still beat Han Sen, which made the secretary felt much better. If Tai was defeated by Han Sen, then his investigation would become a huge joke. Even if the chief did not scold him, the secretary would feel bad himself. What was more important was that this might cost him the trust of the chief. If he could not even do a brief analysis right, would the chief trust him with more important matters in the future? For a secretary, it was dangerous to lose the trust of his supervisor. You seem to be relieved. The chief suddenly turned back and looked at the secretary. No, the secretary was surprised and answered hurriedly. Do you think Han Sen will lose? The chief asked again. The secretary muttered, not sure how to answer. It is not your fault to be mistaken in the investigation. After all, you did not see Han Sen in person. However, if you still failed to make the correct judgments after he saw him, then it could only mean that you still have much to learn. The chief said casually. Chief, you're saying that Han Sen will win. The secretary suddenly became pale. But the chief did not say much more, gazing at the two soldiers on the stage deeply. Did you finish? Seeing Han Sen stepping back, Tai said coldly. Yes. Han Sen swung his arms to relieve the prickling of his bones. Having hit Tai's a dozen times, his bones were about to be cracked. Super Diamond Body was indeed quite frightening. Then it is my turn, Tai said and raised his fist, ready to hit Han Sen. I don't think you should make that move, Han Sen said sullenly. Why? Tai frowned slightly, not understanding what Han Sen meant. Because you have already lost, Han-sen said seriously to Tai. Ha, nonsense. Tai snorted and did not deign to speak to Han-sen again, raising his fist at Han-sen. Same as Tai, Han-sen stood still against Tai's fist. So, Han-sen has also practiced Super Diamond Body. That's unlikely. How old is he? Even if he's talented, it is impossible for him to succeed in practicing Super Diamond Body. Why is he staying still then? Is he waiting to be punched? Who knows? He just said Tai has already lost. So, there must be some reason. The soldiers looked at Han-sen, who was motionless, puzzled. Tai's fist was about to hit Han-sen's face, but Han-sen was still standing calmly, as if Tai were not trying to attack him. When Tai's fist was less than 5 inches from Han-sen's face, everyone's heart was in their throats, and Tai suddenly froze. Although Tai's fist was only inches away from Han-sen, Tai suddenly stopped moving and looked terrified. Very pale, and cold sweat started to appear on his forehead. If observed closely, his body was also shivering. I just suggested you not to make that move, but you didn't listen. Now I'm afraid you have to suffer a bit. Han-sen sighed and said, "You." Tai was about to say something, but when he just said a word, blood filled his mouth, and his metal body suddenly became pale. The places where Han-sen had hit became red. Tai tried hard to punch Han-sen's face, which was right next to his fist, but he only moved an inch before he started to vomit blood. His magnificent body found next to Han-sen's feet, and he failed to stand up again after struggling. Blood came out of his mouth continuously. Strange silence fell on the venue. Everyone looked at this incredulous seeing, feeling shocked. Yin-Yang Blast that Han-sen had practiced for a long time was eventually put into use. Yin-Yang Blast, invented by Professor Bai, was a method to use strength, and it could be used by people of any status. Han-sen's conversion rate of the Yin force had reached over 95%. Initially, he thought it might take some extra work to get rid of Tai. After all, the Yin force could not hurt Tai when his limbs were hit. Only when Han-sen hit Tai where the inner organs were located could Han-sen manage to injure the vulnerable organs. However, unexpectedly, Tai was so confident in his fitness and super diamond body that Tai did not try to block Han-sen's punches at all, which saved Han-sen a lot of trouble. Since it was merely a contest, Han-sen did not have any murderous thoughts. Otherwise, if he hit Tai's head, Tai would at least become an idiot if he was not killed. However, Tai was not to blame for his negligence. In such an interstellar era where efficiency is everything, there were few people willing to spend time and energy to practice the Yin force. In addition, even fewer people could succeed. No one had imagined that the invincible tiger of blue blood was defeated like that, in such an unimaginable way. Tai's choice to let Han-sen hit him was seen as a sign of ignorance and arrogance, while Han-sen became the hero and glory of the southwestern galaxy overnight. Many surpassers looked at Han-sen with more respect. The young man who could endure the boredom to practice the Yin force so well was in no way an ordinary person. His perseverance and insistence were all what it took for people to remember his name. Nowadays, less and less young people are truly dedicated to martial arts. Most people only focus on the skills instead of the arts. That's why they never reach a high level. This Han-sen is very good, looking like a true master. He will have a great future for sure, said the chief with approval. Without any suspense, Han-sen beat Zheng Yu's and became the new Southwest Soldier King. Zheng Yu's was not able to fight back effectively from the beginning to the end. It was as if the two persons were not on the same level at all. In fact, Zheng Yu's was afraid before he even started, terrified by Tai's injuries inflicted by Han-sen. Zheng Yu's was too conservative to perform at his usual level. The chief himself personally awarded Han-sen the medal and certificate. Unfortunately, there was no material or monetary reward in the military, which upset Han-sen a little bit. The soldiers who had participated in the contest returned to their troops and told others about how Han-sen beat Tai, making the name Han-sen known to almost everyone in the Southwest Galaxy, which was a great honor. "I'm sorry, Captain. I messed up," Tai said wryly to the good-looking man sitting next to him, lying on the bed in the hospital. "Kitty cat, don't feel sorry for yourself. A man can only grow in mistakes. If a man had never made a mistake, it only means that he is a dedicated flower that has never seen storms. You are still a kitty cat right now, but after experiencing mistake after mistake, you will become the true tiger of blue blood one day. Mistakes are not bad for you. As long as you have not died yet, those mistakes will nourish you eventually," the good-looking man said with a smile. "Captain, a hunk as strong as Tai almost sobbed. To cry after being beaten is not blue blood style." The good-looking man patted Tai on the head lovingly. Someone had seen the scene. He would definitely feel weird or even amused. The good-looking man seemed to be in his 20s, much younger than Tai. However, Tai looked like a child in front of him. However, as weird as it looked, there was a harmony to it. If someone knew the good-looking man, he would not feel weird about it at all. Liu Hui, the captain of Blue Blood Reserve Force, was only 27 years old but has the nickname Devil Captain. The nickname of Tai, Tiger of Blue Blood, was in fact from Liu Hui. However, Liu Hui initially called Tai Kitty Cat of Blue Blood. Except for Liu Hui, anyone who called Tai that would be beaten hard. Then, the other members of the reserve force twisted the name and called Tai the Young Tiger, which later became Tiger of Blue Blood when spread wider. Get better and there are worse training waiting for you in the future. Don't think there is no consequence for your loss. After you go back, your training will be doubled, Liu Hui said lightly. Yes, Captain, I will train harder. Next time, I will not lose to that guy, Tai said, gritting his teeth. He is no longer your opponent. However, it is a nice thought to have. Keep it. Liu Hui smiled and thought of Han Sen. When Han Sen returned to Daphne, he reported to Jai Yanren's office. Just when he entered the office, he smelled fragrance before he saw his girlfriend throwing herself at him. She wrapped her legs around his waist and held his faces with her hand, kissing him passionately. My dear, you are so great. I love you so much. Jai Yanren did not expect Han Sen to beat Tai and gain the post. She excitedly offered her hottest lips, which Han Sen would never turn down. He held her butts with his hands, admiring how plump and bouncy they were. Jai Yanren, who was shy in general but seemed to be in a great mood this time. She even unbuttoned Han Sen's shirt and kissed down his neck. When Han Sen went out of the office with limp legs, he could still hear Jai Yanren's tempting voice. This is a special reward for you. I love this reward. Han Sen walked as he hung a little song. Before long, he suddenly felt a chill. Han Sen shivered and looked ahead. A woman in military uniform was standing opposite him, looking at Han Sen coldly as if he were an animal. The looks on the woman's face made Han Sen feel she was not looking at a man, or even a human. In her eyes, Han Sen was no different from a cat or dog. If Wendy could be described as a cold soldier, then this woman just seemed like a bloodthirsty killer. Although Han Sen had never seen this woman before, he had this impression already at the first sight. He could not tell why, but he thought this woman was so scary that he would rather beat 10 men like Tai before pissing her off. The woman walked straight past Han Sen and surprisingly knocked on Jai Yanren's door. Who is that woman? How come I have never seen her before? That night, Jai Yanren was chatting with Han Sen using comlink lying on her bed. That woman is your other guard. Han Sen still remembered that woman and asked casually. Yes, that is Colonel Annie. She is my new guard. Do not try to flirt with her. She is a surpasser. If you piss her off, I could not stop her, Jai Yanren said, smiling. My dear wife, what is it that your family do? They're able to get you a surpasser as guard. Han Sen couldn't help asking. Han Sen had never asked about Jai Yanren's family, but he was so surprised this time. Even those captains of interstellar warships will not be so extravagant that they use surpassers as their guards. Have you been following the news recently? Jai Yanren did not answer but asked. Not a lot, but I know something. Han Sen would read the news from time to time in case that he knew too little about the society. Have you seen any news related to the JIS? Jai Yanren asked with a smile. News about the JIS? Han Sen thought about it and suddenly stared his eyes wide. You mean the one who entered the election recently? The next morning, Han Sen got up and teleported into God's sanctuary. This time, he did not rush to go hunting. He decided to go to the market of the Starwheel shelter to buy some mutant beast souls. Even if mutant beast souls were not that helpful to him, he could easily elevate them into berserk mutant beast souls with the black crystal to make a lot of money. Such a good deal was not to be missed. Han Sen wandered around in the market of the Starwheel shelter, which was much more bustling than the goddess shelter which belonged to Han Sen. However, mutant beast souls were still hard to find, and there was none of the sacred blood beast souls. Han Sen had his eyes on several mutant beast souls and asked for the price, but most of the owners did not want cash, but to trade for a beast soul on the same level. For the ones sold for cash, Han Sen did not like them as much. 1 out of 100 beast souls would be berserk. So, if Han Sen sold berserk beast souls in large quantities, someone would eventually suspect him, which was why he did not want to sell too many. Currently, Han Sen was looking for a beast soul that could become a dozen or even dozens of times more valuable once it became berserk. Maybe he could even make enough money to purchase a sacred blood beast soul. That was not unlikely. He could not pick and choose sacred blood beast souls, but he could pick some rare mutant beast souls that were highly popular among evolvers. Hello, how much do you want for the mutant snowy wolf? Han Sen asked the owner, pointing at a wolf beast soul that looked like a snowball. Snowy wolves were not rare on the ice field. In fact, there were so many of them that they caused a lot of troubles. On the ice field, you could easily spot hundreds of thousands of snowy wolves wandering around. Although most snowy wolves were primitive creatures, normally speaking, humans could not attack such a large group at all. Some snowy wolves even had a group of 100,000. Trading for beast soul weapon on the same level, better be heavy sword. The owner glanced at Han-sen, lacking the enthusiasm that a seller should have. That was completely normal. After all, he was selling popular stuff which everyone wanted. Because the owner's request was specific, a deal was never made. A dozen minutes before Han-sen came, several people had come by and asked, but there was still no deal. You want to trade for a St. Hall license? Han-sen did not have beast souls on his hand, so he could only trade with licenses. An S-class license for evolvers. I could pay you extra, but I don't want anything below S-class, the owner said directly. Although the mutant snowy wolf is valuable, it is not quite enough to be traded for an S-class St. Hall license, right? Han-sen looked at the other mutant beast soul that the owner had. It was a black ape beast soul, 6 to 9 feet tall. Its hair looked like tungsten. The muscles on his chest were so strong that they looked like bulks of iron, looking magnificent. You really have an S-class St. Hall license. The owner's eyes lit up. He eventually got excited and looked at Han-sen expectantly. What is the type of this mutant beast soul? Han-sen did not answer, but asked, pointing at the black ape. It is a shape-shifting beast soul, violent ape. After shape-shifting, your strength will be enhanced greatly. However, it could only enhance your strength, and would even hurt your flexibility a little bit. Being an honest man, the owner explained both the pros and cons of the mutant violent ape. How much strength can it give me? Han-sen's eyes lit up a little bit. Beast souls with shortcomings would definitely have more outstanding strengths. Pure strength was quite useful to Han-sen. After all, his strength was not quite enough at this point. It was still hard for him to kill sacred blood creatures with strong defense. This depends on your fitness. Normally speaking, the increase should be more than 10 points, the owner pondered and said. Han-sen calculated and found that more than 10 points were quite good. With his current ability, he could easily achieve 120 to 130. If he evolved it into a Berserk Beast Soul, the increase should be higher. 1 S-Class Evolver St. Hall license for 2 Beast Souls of yours. How about that? Han-sen took out a license and showed it to the owner. The ice field was a small region after all. If it were in a more populated area, many people would kill to trade to Mutant Beast Soul for an S-Class St. Hall license. However, in this place, the resources were so limited that the owner was still hesitating about the deal. After pondering for a while, the owner obviously wanted the S-Class St. Hall license very much. He said decisively, okay, let's do it. The deal was completed smoothly, and Han-sen got the mutant snowy wolf and violent ape. When he came to the frozen lake, he found that it was no different from the glaciers. Under his feet was thick ice. Even the thinnest place was 3 to 6 feet thick. There were many people on the frozen lake. Because of the limited resources on the ice field, the frozen lake could be counted as a nice spot to go fishing since mutant creatures could be spotted sometimes. It took some patience to fish there. If he had good luck, it might only take 1 day for him to catch a mutant creature. If his luck was bad, it would take him more than half a month to catch one. Han-sen did not plan to make the hole himself. He found a hole no longer used, took care of the thin ice that had formulated already, put the bait on the hook and fished in the hole. Han-sen put down his stool and sat down. Wearing the leather mail of Snowy Wolf, he did not feel cold at all. Taking out a textbook of ancient language, Han-sen started to read as he waited for fish to take the bait. It's you. When Han-sen just sat down for a while, someone who walked past with staff in her hand ran to Han-sen in surprise after seeing him. Han-sen looked up and found it was the tall woman, Guan-tong. You're also here to fish. Han-sen smiled at Guan-tong. Thank you for last time. Guan-tong opened her mouth and did not know what to say. What? Han-sen was dazed, unable to perceive what he was thanked for. Thank you for saving Starwheel Shelter, Guan-tong said hastily. There was a piece of cake. I needed to thank you for carrying me back the other day, Han-sen said with a smile. Guan-tong, who was rather carefree but couldn't help blushing hearing what Han-sen said. She had understood that Han-sen was fine the other day. Different from what she had thought, Han-sen did not need to be saved, while she took him on her back by force. Guan-tong started to fish about 20 feet from Han-sen, while she glanced at Han-sen from time to time as she fished. Han-sen kept reading and did not notice her at all. More than half an hour later, Han-sen, who was reading, felt some movements on the fish line on his hand. Hansen put down the book in his hands and looked to the boy floating on the water, which was shivering slightly. Hansen put his finger on the fish line and felt the shiver like a traditional Chinese doctor feeling the pulse. He did not pull immediately. After absorbing the red crystal, Hansen's brain had much stronger perceptive abilities. From feeling the movements of the fish line, he could picture what was happening under the water in his mind. Hansen continued to read as he fished. In less than 2 hours, he had caught 4 bluefish and 3 gold anchovies. Although he had not gained any beast souls, his gains were considerable. People next to Hansen were less lucky. When Hansen had caught 7 fish already, the luckiest among the others had only caught 2 fish. Guantong was obviously less lucky. Like most people, she had got nothing since she came. She was not to be blamed for that. Not everyone had the perceptive ability that Hansen had. It was normal not to catch anything, otherwise everyone would have come to the frozen lake. Guantong, the fish tastes good. Come here and try it. Hansen waved to Guantong and said. Guantong had been there for a long time, but she had caught nothing, which made Hansen feel a bit sorry for her. In addition, Guantong had carried him on her back. Hansen then told her to share the fish with him, which he could not finish anyway. I have brought something to eat. Guantong felt quite shy, taking out some nutrition solutions from her pocket. Come here. It is rather boring to eat alone. There is so much food that it would be a waste if we don't finish it, Hansen said with a smile. As Guantong was still hesitating whether she should go over, several people walked to Hansen. Hansen glanced at the people who had walked up to him. They didn't have any fishing tools or personal belongings, so they did not seem to be fishing here. FCK off, Hansen said coldly. You have quite a temper, but I'm afraid that you haven't been told who this place belongs to. The leader of the group, a middle-aged man, did not get mad but smiled coldly at Hansen. They didn't take Hansen's words seriously at all. Our boss at Black God Shelter says that half of the gains in the frozen lake must be handed over to the shelter. You have 7 fish here, so I will make it cheaper for you and only take 3 gold anchovies from you. Hansen had heard that since the frozen lake was near one of the 3 biggest shelters, Black God Shelter, people from Black God Shelter would charge the people who were fishing their fees. Normally speaking, only a primitive fish would be charged, and then the person could fish as long as he wanted to. These people asked for Hansen's 3 most valuable fish. Obviously, they were jealous of Hansen's gains and planned to blackmail him. Seeing the middle-aged man reaching for his bag, Hansen did not speak but stepped on his hand. Damn it, he dared to attack us. The rest of the people saw Hansen making a move and quickly summoned their beast souls, striking Hansen immediately. They were attacking mercilessly, aiming at Hansen's vital parts. Hansen's eyes became cold. When other people tried to kill him, of course he would not be soft. When the weapons were about to hit him, he waved his right hand. With the flash of 3 purple lights, all the weapons were cut into pieces, and the 3 people in the front of him were cut in the chest and died immediately. The other 2 people survived luckily because they did not attack as fast. Full of terror, they turned to run away, shouting, "Go away now. People of Black God Shelter are nearby, and they will be here in a minute." Guantong ran over and said. Hansen nodded slightly and said, "You should go as well. Avoid this area for the time being." After parting with Guantong, Hansen left the frozen lake. He did not want to make things worse between him and Black God Shelter, so there was no need for him to look for trouble. However, as Hansen left the frozen lake, a dozen mounts ran to him and approached him shortly. Obviously, they were targeting him. Among the dozen mounted riders, one was the middle-aged man who had run away. He pointed at Hansen and yelled. The dozen mounts quickly circled Hansen. Their leader, a man in black mail with eyes like a hawk's, stared at Hansen and said coldly, "You killed my men." "They were trying to kill me, so of course I would not choose to be killed," Hansen said, looking at the man in black mail. The man in black mail quickly summoned a beast soul knife that was narrow and long. He pointed it at Hansen and said, "No matter why, you killed my men at a place of the Black God Shelter, so you deserve to die." As he spoke, the man quickly slashed the knife at Hansen. As his claws were about to clash with the long knife of the man in black mail, the long knife unexpectedly disappeared. When it appeared again, it cut Hansen's chest. Blood started to come out of the injury in Hansen's chest. Luckily, Hansen stepped back in time and diverted the majority of the force from the knife. In addition, the gargoyle glyph also made his skin tougher to block the damage. Otherwise, Hansen would have been gutted by this strike. The knife skills of this man in black mail were very strange, and his fitness was incredible, definitely much tougher than Tai. Hansen was not killed by the strike, which surprised the man in black mail slightly. However, he did not stop attacking, but slashed at Han Sen again with his knife. Several people in the group also summoned their beast soul weapons to rush at Han Sen. Judging from their speed, they were all evolvers with fitness above 100. Han Sen knew that he could not stay, or else he would definitely die there. Using Heresy Mantra and Overload at the same time, Han Sen quickly stepped away, running. However, the people besieging Han Sen left no place for him to go. Han Sen had to rush at two of them. The two persons cut at Han Sen without hesitation. Han Sen moved left and right like a willow tree in the wind, dodging both their attacks. However, there was no way he could dodge the strike from the man in black mail who was chasing after him. His back became bloody immediately. Han Sen gritted his teeth and stayed silent. He rushed away as fast as his legs would carry him and broke the siege of the two persons, running fast on the ice field. He knew he could not stay. The fitness of the man in black mail was even stronger than his own. In terms of both fitness and knife skills, the man was the top of the top. With the help of the evolvers with fitness levels above 100, Han Sen would definitely die if he chose to stay. We can't let him leave alive. The man in black mail led the group of people to chase after Han Sen, showing strong desire to get rid of him. The resources on the ice field were so limited that it was completely normal to fight for them. The Black God leader would not tolerate any challenge to his interests or authority, otherwise there was no way he could lead the Black God shelter. Han Sen had known that the competition for resources was heated, but he did not expect it to be as fierce as this. Han Sen's speed was lower than Black God's to begin with. Without any place to hide on the ice field, there was no way he could run away like this. If there were no other evolvers, he could try to fight Black God, risking his life. However, under the circumstances, he could only try to run away. Turning quickly, Han Sen ran toward the frozen lake again. Seeing Black God approaching him, Han Sen jumped inside one of the ice holes and disappeared. Guard the ice holes nearby. I don't believe he will not come out, Black God commanded coldly. The temperature of the water in the frozen lake was incredibly low. Even someone with a fitness level above 100 could not last long under the water. In addition, Han Sen could not breathe under the water, which was why Black God believed that Han Sen could not stay longer than 5 minutes under the water before he appeared in other ice holes. At that time, even if Han Sen wanted to fight again, he would be almost frozen to death, which would make Black God kill him more easily. Han Sen was swimming underneath the ice. Some fish creatures would approach to attack him from time to time, which were all hit senseless by Han Sen's fist. None of them dared to approach him again. The reason that Han Sen did not kill those fish was that he was afraid the bodies of the fish would float to the surface, which would expose his location under the water. The frozen lake was huge after all. If he swam further away and climbed up, he could naturally escape successfully. After Han Sen swam for a while, he felt there was something wrong with the current. The current behind him seemed to be moving. He turned around and found a silver creature that looked like an eel, which rushed toward him like a torpedo. The silver body as wide as a bucket stirred up the water, which made Han Sen roll around before he stabled himself. The eel turned around and rushed to Han Sen again. Han Sen thought it was not the way to go, so he moved sideways to dodge the eel and did his claws into its silver scales. As if he were climbing a tree, Han Sen wrapped his arms and legs around the eel's body. No matter how the eel rolled, Han Sen stuck to the creature. Although the claws were berserk, which made it tougher than ordinary sacred blood weapons, it only pierced the eel's body by 2 inches. The eel was so strong that it was definitely a sacred blood creature. In the water, Han Sen was not its match at all. He closed his eyes and held the eel tightly as it rolled. With the toxins on the claws, the eel shouldn't be able to survive too long. The eel rolled so hard that it was incredibly fast in the lake. Han Sen stayed on the eel for a long while and felt something was wrong. The eel turned out to be swimming deeper and deeper. Han Sen did not know how deep the lake was, but the pressure became higher and higher. Even with his fitness and snowy wolf mail, he still felt terrible from the pressure. Is it possible that this guy is immune to the poison? As Han Sen was feeling depressed, he suddenly felt emptiness below his feet and fell. The first thought Han Sen had was that the eel had jumped out of the water. However, he denied the thought immediately. He was falling down from the water and did not go up for it at all. Han Sen quickly opened his eyes to look, and what he saw made him feel dazed. Thump! Han Sen and the eel fell on the crystal-like floor. Luckily, Han Sen acted fast enough to flip himself up on the eel's back, making the eel take the impact. Having left the water, the eel wiggled like a snake on the crystal-like floor. However, the places injured by the claws on its body had become purple and black, easily to be spotted on its silver body. Han Sen did not think too much and cut the eel with the claws like crazy, making injury after injury on the silver body. The eel struggled to fight back, but it was very much poisoned. Having left the water, it soon left the ability to struggle and lied motionless on the floor. Sacred blood creature silver eel killed. Beast soul of silver eel gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 sacred geno points. Han-sen was excited. However, he did not look at the body of the killed creature. Looking straight ahead, Han-sen felt incredulous. Han-sen did not know whether Atlantis, the legendary city, was real. However, this place shocked him no less than finding Atlantis. A gigantic sailboat was sitting at the bottom of the lake. Water avoided the sailboat and formed a spherical space under the water. Han-sen and the silver eel fell on the left of the boat. Standing on the boat, Han-sen looked like an ant. This sailboat was a dozen times bigger than Daphne. However, it looked too ancient to be a spacecraft. As far as Han-sen could see, there was no gaps on the material of the boat. It looks like it was carved out from an entire piece of crystal. Such a huge project was only possible in the Alliance. In the God's Sanctuary, there were no available mechanics, and it was impossible to be carved out by hand. Judging from the huge silver oars, humans should not be able to manipulate this boat. As Han-sen was dazed, he suddenly heard noises from the mysterious crystal boat. Looking to the direction of the noise, Han-sen saw something coming out of the chambers of the boat. With the gleaming of golden light, Han-sen's eyes were even prickly. The thing gradually appeared in his sight, and what he saw first was a crab pincer, followed by the body of a golden crab. It slowly climbed down the rope. Seeing where the golden crab was going, Han-sen originally thought it was targeting himself. However, the golden crab quickly rushed to the dead body of the silver eel. "Damn it, this guy wants to steal my food. Don't you know that I am famous for being petty?" Han-sen bristled. Disregarding his injuries, Han-sen waved his claws at the golden crab. The golden crab was naturally much larger than ordinary crabs. However, it was not too big among creatures, about the size of a jeep. Like ordinary crabs, it could only climb sideways. Creatures with flaws like this were Han-sen's favorite. He went to the back of the crab and clawed at the golden shell. Ding! The seemingly clumsy body of the golden crab suddenly bounced, facing Han-sen with its head. The golden pincer blocked Han-sen's claws. Feeling a huge force, Han-sen's right hand started to bleed. His entire arm was numb, and he couldn't help stepping back a dozen steps before he could stable himself. Moving all its 8 claws, the golden crab moved sideways toward Han-sen quickly in an incredibly nimble way. What kind of crab is this? So weird. Han-sen turned back and ran around the crystal sailboat. Since the golden crab was incredibly fast and strong, Han-sen found he could not take care of the creature at all. Running after Han-sen for several laps, the golden crab failed to catch up with him and became so upset that it kept making noises with its pincer. Because Han-sen was so good at his footwork, although he was slower than the golden crab, he could leverage the crystal sailboat as an obstruction to get rid of the golden crab. As Han-sen was pondering what kind of tricks he needed to adopt to take care of this golden crab, the crab suddenly gave up chasing him and ran toward the body of the silver eel. I wonder if this guy eats the toxic meat of the silver eel, will it be poisoned as well? Although Han-sen had this thought, the meat of the silver eel would be wasted if the golden crab was immune to the toxins. Thinking that, Han-sen ran to launch a sneak attack against the golden crab from its back, trying to stop it from eating the silver eel. Han-sen and the crab were both trapped in a dilemma. The golden crab could not catch up with Han-sen, nor could it eat the eel peacefully. They kept fighting and none of them was able to take any advantage. Guarding the body of the silver eel, the golden crab faced Han-sen, no longer wanting to chase him. However, it did not dare to turn around to eat the meat either. With the golden crab next to him, Han-sen stared at the creature. Neither of the two knew how to proceed. Han-sen observed the golden crab carefully, wishing to find its weaknesses. If it were an ordinary crab, the links and gaps between its shells should be its weakness. However, this golden crab was obviously somewhat different. The links between its shells were of a deeper golden color. Although the links were narrow, he could tell that they were even tougher than the shells. As for gaps, the golden crab did not have any. It was as if the crab was made of a piece of gold. As Han-sen was feeling depressed, he suddenly saw the golden crab waving its pincer at him. Han-sen thought it was about to attack again, and then found it did not move. It was waving its pincer to Han-sen. The act did not look like a provocation or an assault but seemed to be a come here between humans. Han-sen thought he was mistaken, rubbed his eyes, and found it was still waving like that. "Big crab, you are not a flirty girl. There is no use for you to tempt me like this." Han-sen did not know what the golden crab wanted, so of course he could not approach it. Han-sen simply yelled at the crab. Han-sen did not know whether the golden crab understood himself, but it most likely did not. After Hansen said that, the golden crab turned around and pointed at the silver eel's body with its pincer, and then pointed to Hansen. Hansen saw the golden crab making gestures, not understanding what it meant. He was so confused that he was full of questions. At this point, Hansen only regretted that he had never learned the language of the crab. Otherwise, he might be able to chat with this crab to see what was it that it wanted. The golden crab made the gestures again and again, repeating its moves. It was blowing bubbles from time to time, seeming to be very anxious, wishing it could speak to Hansen. Hansen watched for a while and felt his talent in learning the crab language was indeed lacking. However, he suddenly thought of one thing, which was the fact that he still had the spirit snow charmer. Although she had lost the ability to control other creatures after it gave Hansen her allegiance, she had been the master of creatures once, so she might understood what the crab was talking about. Summoning Snow Charmer, Hansen pointed at the golden crab making the gestures and asked her, "Snow Charmer, do you know its language?" "No," Snow Charmer answered decisively. Hansen was suddenly very disappointed. Since even Snow Charmer did not understand the crab language, it was impossible for himself to know what it was trying to say. "However, I do know what it means," Snow Charmer continued to say. "What does it want to say?" Hansen was excited and asked Snow Charmer. Snow Charmer said quietly, "Its gesture is quite obvious. It wants to split the body of the silver eel with you." Hansen was dazed. Looking at the gestures of the golden crab, he felt it was true. The golden crab made a gesture in the middle of the silver eel's body, and then pointed to both sides and Hansen. It seemed to be saying Hansen could pick one side. Hansen blushed. Such a simple gesture, yet he was unable to understand it. How foolish. Hansen quickly took Snow Charmer back. Making his servant see his foolish side, Hansen felt quite embarrassed. "Half is no, 2/3. Mine," Hansen gestured as he spoke, sounding like an alien. However, this time the golden crab was the one who was confused. It stared at Hansen with bubbles coming out of its mouth and even scratched its head with its pincer like a person. Seeing that the golden crab did not understand him, Hansen did not dare to approach the body either. He had to gesture to the golden crab to ask it to step aside repeatedly. Luckily, this gesture was easy to be understood. The golden crab moved aside and stared at Hansen in suspicion. Hansen gestured it to move aside a bit further, and so it did. After a couple of times, Hansen made sure that the distance between the golden crab and the silver eel was safe to him. He then walked next to the silver eel's body, gesturing at 2/3 of the body like the golden crab. He then pointed the smaller part and then the golden crab, the larger part and then himself. The golden crab seemed to be understanding this time. As it shook its pincer, it moved its claws and returned to the eel. Hansen felt scared and stepped back quickly, but the golden crab did not mean to chase after him. It gestured on the body again, meaning it insisted on half and half. Hansen could not believe that he would bargain with a crab at this place with gestures. And this golden crab looked like an older lady bargaining in the farmer's market, not willing to sacrifice anything. The man and the crab discussed for a while and finally reached an agreement. Hansen could take about 3/5, while the golden crab was to take 2/5. "Eat as you want. I wish you the bloody crab would be poisoned to death." Hansen cut the body of the silver eel according to the proportion they had agreed through gestures. Seeing the golden crab taking its part with its pincer, Hansen cursed inwardly. Hansen was afraid that the crab might snatch his part after it finished its own, so he summoned the angel, feeding the remaining silver eel to her. The archangel was the main force to help him hunt super creatures, so it was essential to Hansen that she transform again. Sacred blood meat was not a waste on her. In addition, this silver eel was as thick as a bucket and more than 30 feet long. Hansen's part was about 18 feet long. It was too much for him to eat up, while the archangel was eating with ease. Her mouth moving non-stop, she was not affected by the toxins at all. The silver eel disappeared quickly. Hansen then had the time to look at the beast soul of the silver eel. Hansen felt he was a bit too lucky recently. As long as he hunted a sacred blood creature, he would gain a beast soul, which even scared Hansen himself a little bit. Type of beast soul of sacred blood silver eel, water mount. Water mount. Hansen became overjoyed. He was just wondering how he could come back to this place again. After all, humans could not stay in the water for a long time and this place was so deep in the water. Hansen was not sure whether he was able to dive so deep himself. With the silver eel mount, it would be easy for him to come down. The only shortcoming of the beast's soul was that it could not be used on the land. However, that did not trouble Hansen at all. He had the golden growler on the land and did not need anything else. As the archangel was enjoying the needs of the silver eel, Hansen checked the crystal sailboat out and climbed to the deck. The sailboat was so big and carved out of crystal. However, nothing could be seen inside the boat, which made him feel quite weird. The golden crab had disappeared in a cabin, so Han Sen wanted to see whether there was other stuff in the cabin. However, before he came to the entrance, the golden crab suddenly rushed out, waving the pincer fiercely at Han Sen. "Buddy, don't be so nervous. I am only looking around and do not mean you harm." Han Sen stepped back and said with a smile, seeing that the golden crab was just guarding the entrance and did not chase him. However, the golden crab did not know what he was talking about, threatening him against approaching with its pincer. The more reluctant the golden crab was, the more Han Sen wanted to see what was in the cabin. However, he looked at the entire crystal sailboat and found that entrance was the only one. Since it was guarded by the golden crab, there was no way that Han Sen could enter. "How come you are not poisoned?" Han Sen became upset, as he was not able to see what was inside the boat. He tried to stick his head up and look. Han Sen was no match of the golden crab, so he had to retreat temporarily to think of another way. Currently, Han Sen was very curious about the thing inside the crystal boat and was not in a rush to leave. In addition, he wondered if those people from Black God's shelter were still guarding outside, so it was unnecessary for him to go out of the water. "When I go out, I will definitely try to wipe out Black God's shelter." Han Sen decided that as long as Black God's shelter was still there, his grudge would never disappear. In addition, Goddess Shelter was surrounded by ocean in 3 directions. In order to develop, it must expand to the ice field, which meant he must have his own place here. Now that Black God did him a service by becoming his enemy, Han Sen would not be polite with him. Han Sen had heard from Lai Xinglan that Black God was the strongest among the 3 forces on the ice field with the most resources. Lai Xinglan and the other force could only be its match when they united, maintaining the balance between the 3. Previously, when Starwheel Shelter was under the attack of spirits and the other shelter was distracted, Black God's shelter did not try to help. They probably wanted to unite the entire ice field after Starwheel Shelter was wiped out. It was not easy to conquer Black God's shelter, obviously. Blood God himself was stronger than Han Sen, so he was very likely someone that had almost maxed out on sacred Geno points. His fitness index should be more than 120. In addition, Han Sen was deterred by the knife skills of Black God. Up until this moment, Han Sen still failed to understand how the strike disappeared, and if he did not understand it, he would suffer again when faced with Black God. "If I could not beat him, I would rob him." Black God's shelter has such a large territory that I don't believe they could guard all the places if I attacked one by one. Han Sen made up his mind to take care of the Black God territory when he got out. When he returned to the lower level of the boat, he saw that the Archangel had almost finished the body of the silver eel, with only a head left. Han Sen had a thought and stopped the Archangel from her feast, taking her back into his Sea of Soul. Han Sen looked around and hanged the head of the silver eel on a rope in front of the ship and hid on the right flank of the ship himself. After waiting for several hours, he indeed saw the golden crab sneaking out. However, because there was only a single rope, the crab could not climb up with its claws. It had to jump up to reach the head of the eel with its pincer. Seeing that the golden crab having left the crystal, Han Sen secretly climbed onto the deck and sneaked into the cabin. When the golden crab was under the silver eel, it jumped twice but did not catch the head of the silver eel. Han Sen felt content secretly. He had calculated the height of the jump of the crab, and he deliberately made it hard for it to reach. However, the crab would not give up either. This way, he had enough time. Standing in front of the entrance, Han Sen looked inside the cabin. It was a hall inside. Everything was carved out of crystal, looking very delicate and beautiful. In the middle of the hall, the crystal table was placed. Han Sen originally thought it was a table, but when he entered, he found it was no table, but a crystal treasure box with the crystal lock on the outside. However, the lock was not locked, so it was not really effective. Is there some kind of treasure of the pirate or curse of the phantom boat? Han Sen suddenly felt hesitant. Greed and curiosity eventually beat his logic. Han Sen heard the noise of the head of the silver eel falling and knew that the golden crab would return very soon. He gritted his teeth, summoned Snow Charmer, stood next to the cabin door, and asked Snow Charmer to open the crystal box. The spirit was absolutely loyal to her master. After hearing the command, she took off the lock and lifted the lid of the box. Seeing nothing dangerous had happened, Han Sen quickly walked up to the crystal treasure box and had a look. In the treasure box there was a woman, whose lower body was a fishtail. Her upper body was naked and pale, with 2 scallops covering her boobs. Her long blue hair fell like a waterfall, and her ears were blue fins, looking pretty but weird. Is this thing a mermaid? Han Sen looked at the woman inside the treasure box and saw 2 other things next to her. One was a staff shaped like blue coral, and the other was a shiny gemstone. Spirit staff, spirit stone. Is this mermaid-like creature a spirit? Han-sen saw what the two items were and looked to the mermaid in the box, surprised. According to the logic, once the shelter was conquered, the spirit had no way to run away. It could either choose to give its allegiance or destroy itself together with the spirit stone. How come this mermaid-like spirit was placed in this box? Suddenly, a thought made Han-sen's eyes lit up. The sailboat does not look like it was made by humans. Is it possible that this crystal sailboat is in fact a shelter? With the noise outside, Han-sen knew the golden crab seemed to be back. He quickly grabbed the spirit stone. If the mermaid was really a spirit, as long as Han-sen grabbed the spirit stone, the spirit must be his. Just when Han-sen put his hands on the spirit stone, the golden crab had rushed into the hall. After it saw Han-sen, it became furious, rushing toward him waving its pincer. He took the spirit stone in his hand and ran around the hall. He used the techniques in Dongshuan Sutra and ran from the golden crab using the pillars and other stuff as obstructions. Han-sen and the crab were running inside the crystal boat, and there was nothing the golden crab could do to Han-sen. When Han-sen ran, he suddenly heard a noise. Where the noise came from was the box that trapped the mermaid's spirit. When he turned around to look, he saw the mermaid had sat up. Her white hands rubbed her eyes and then stretched. It looked like she had slept well. After the mermaid woke up, she saw Han-sen and the spirit stone in his hand. Her blue eyes were suddenly dazed, and she froze for a while. The golden crab was still chasing after Han-sen. When Han-sen was about to continue to run, he suddenly saw the mermaid taking up the staff and pointing it to the golden crab. The golden crab went to the side immediately and did not chase Han-sen anymore. The mermaid went out of the crystal box with the staff in her hand. When she walked, a piece of wave moved under her fishtail, supporting her to go forward. The mermaid went up to Han-sen, bowed to him with a hand on her right chest, and then she said, "Mermaid Princess wishes to give her master her pure soul, and become his loyal servant." Mermaid Princess. This mermaid is a royal spirit. Han-sen heard her words and became overjoyed. He did not expect a mishap had come a blessing. Just by wandering around under the water, he had gained a royal spirit. There were two types of royal spirits. One was princess and the other was prince. Han-sen did not hesitate and put the spirit stone on her forehead. In blue light, the spirit stone and the mermaid became one. They both became a light that entered Han-sen's sea of soul. Mermaid Princess, royal spirit. She is indeed a royal spirit. Han-sen checked the information of the princess. Although he had expected it, he still became overjoyed. After the mermaid princess became Han-sen's, the golden crab suddenly became fierce again. It was no longer bound by the spirit and rushed to Han-sen again. Han-sen ran out of the cabin to dodge the attack of the golden crab. He made it all the way under the crystal boat and the golden crab then gave up its chase. Han-sen moved further away from the boat and summoned the mermaid princess. He then commanded her, "Get rid of the annoying crab." Since it was a royal spirit, then her ability should be the equivalence of a sacred blood creature. With her unique intelligence, she should be able to be the match of the crab even if she could not kill it. However, the mermaid did not move at Han-sen's command. She took a deep breath, her ample breasts under white scallops shivered, and she said, "Master, I don't have the ability to kill it." Han-sen felt dazed and looked at her. "Are you not a royal spirit? Even if you could not kill the crab, you should be able to fight it." "Sorry, master, I am not a fighting spirit. I do not have the ability to fight," said the mermaid princess. "Then what is your ability?" Han-sen asked curiously. He had heard about the non-combatant spirits, which were rather rare. However, that was mainly because the spirits that humans gained were limited in general. "I could operate the crystal palace." The mermaid princess pointed at the crystal sailboat. "How would that be useful?" Han-sen looked at the mermaid princess, dazed. The ability of this royal spirit was just to operate a boat. Han-sen could not think of what use it would serve. The crystal palace shelter is indestructible internally. It could sail to any place in the water, and it could go to the bottom of the sea. Except for the fact that it could not leave the water, Crystal Palace could reach anywhere. Mermaid Princess was obviously upset about Han-sen questioning her ability. Han-sen thought about it and reckoned that this ability was rather nice. Since the boat was a royal shelter, Han-sen now had a moving castle on the ocean with Mermaid Princess. He could go hunting without any efforts, which would solve the issue of the lack of creatures. Thinking it was a nice thing to have, Han-sen commanded the Mermaid Princess again. "Okay, get the Crystal Palace over here right now." "Sorry, master, I could not," the spirit said helplessly. "How come you could not do that either? Didn't you just say that you could operate the Crystal Palace?" Han-sen looked at the spirit in suspicion. "I must be sitting on the operating seat of the Crystal Palace to control it," answered Mermaid Princess. Han-sen became somewhat depressed. The golden crab was guarding the cabin, so it did not make sense for him to rush inside. In addition, God knows whether there were more impressive creatures inside. Forget it. When I think of a way to kill the crab, I will take back the Crystal Palace. Han Sen gave up the thought of taking the sailboat by force. Other people did not have Mermaid Princess anyway, so they could not take the sailboat away even if they had discovered it. At a remote corner of the frozen lake, Han Sen made an ice hole from underneath the water and climbed out. He shook off the water on his body and quickly left the lake for the ice field, seeing no one was around. Han Sen wanted to go to Starwheel Shelter to ask Lai Zinglin about the detailed information of Black God's shelter. Only when he had more information about his enemy could he hit his enemy harder. Especially, Han Sen must find out about Black God's knife skills. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.